This is a queer fat club.
I'm queer and fat.
Okay, thank you for joining. We're just introducing ourselves at the moment.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Joe?
Yeah, my name's Joe. I go by he, they, and I identify as 275 pounds.
Okay.
I feel like Jay's kind of making fun of me, though. I know it's kind of a shock. I know, kind of a new thing.
I'm just, drunk.
Do what?
I said I apologize.
Oh, no, you're good.
Are you comfortable leaving the group at the moment?
Why?
I'm not understanding why you're joining the group.
This is the queer and fat group now?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I came here for.
Okay. And you said you identify as fat?
Yeah.
Okay. This is just for fat-bodied people.
Yeah, I understand. I identify as a fat-bodied person.
Why is it that you are in strong support of religious values being instilled as American values and protected by the Constitution when our founding fathers kind of tried to stray away from a instillment of a specific religion on the entire country?
Well, I would reject the premise, but let's just kind of ask let's ask you, by what standard do you think we should live by?
Standard in the country?
Just as humanity, what should we say is good or evil, and where should we get that from?
I think that we should have a set amount of values that come from what we as a society kind of create, and that can be contributed by a mix of different religions and perspectives and opinions, which is why I disagree with the instillment of a specific religion on the entire country.
So I'll tell you what I believe. I believe specifically the 10 Commandments is a great place to start. What would you say are rules for life, and where do we get them from, and why should we believe them?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I mean, so again, like I said, I think that a lot of things we can point to the Bible, we can point to the 10 Commandments, we can point to a lot of these teachings, and we can say, okay, here's a good set of values that we have that are outlined in the 10 Commandments, in the Bible, and stuff like that. But we can also, what that raises the issues of is what that does for the rest of the country. Because if you flip that logic and you applied it to, let's say, values of Islam, values of Hinduism, values of Buddhism.
We weren't founded on those values, though.
Correct.
Right?
We were not founded on those values, but also I think that just because we were founded on beneficial values of a specific religion does not mean that we as a country should look to solidify the entire country in religion. And what we're seeing a lot in government is more religious involvement. We're seeing a lot of money.
Which we should. We should have a ton more religious involvement. And the reason primarily being is if America goes secular, it will lose its mind.
Would you agree then?
And we're seeing that.
Would you agree with if the president elected was Muslim or had a different religion than you? Would you also?
Well, let's take Vivek. I mean, Vivek is a Hindu, but Vivek would come up here and say the 10 Commandments is one of the greatest moral breakthroughs ever. The point being, and this is what I'm getting at, is that Christianity is the greatest ethic that humanity has ever had to live under. Hold on a second.
Sorry.
Christianity, as we know it, is the greatest moral ethic. And these are things you agree with. Love the stranger, help others, have justice.
Love thy neighbor.
Yeah, love thy neighbor as yourself, like Leviticus 19, right? These are beautiful teachings. In fact, they're so beautiful that you think that they're common, when in reality the rest of the world doesn't always have them. Even freedom of speech and natural rights and charity to the lesser, these are all Christian values. So what I'm getting at, though, is if we remove Christian values, which you may or may not be suggesting, what do we replace them with?
I guess my question is more centered around using taxpayer dollars. Well, I guess I can lead with a question. How do you feel about taxpayer dollars using to fund things like Bible teachings in public schools?
Yeah, I totally support that. The Bible is a historical document.
And so my question again is, how would you feel about taxpayer dollars going towards teachings of the Quran?
Well, they actually do that already.
And are you in support of it?
Hold on a second. Pause. We do have a religious texts of a lot of public schools. Yes, we should look at all religious texts of great faiths and learn and examine them. Okay, what does the Quran say? What does the Bible say? If it's in a public school.
But I think you know what I'm getting, pointing at.
Sort of, but it's important to understand, though, that only one of those texts was believed and continued this country moving forward, which, of course, is the Holy Bible. And the teachings of the Bible were at 55 out of 56 of the signers of the Constitution were Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. God is mentioned 4 times in the Declaration of Independence, right? We were an explicitly Christian country. In fact, John Adams said that the Constitution was written wholly for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate for the people of any other. I might not convince you on this. What I might convince you on, though, is that if you say Christianity should not be involved in our government, fine. You got to replace it with something. And if you say it's neutral, there's no such thing as a neutral public square. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that, and I'll be quick because I know there's other people I want to talk to. But what I'm saying is, I would say that I disagree strictly with a certain teaching, a certain religion being the basis of what we take all beneficial teaching that we apply to the United States.
Fine, but then who chooses the moral code?
I think that the people as a whole who can represent different religions,
how do we
who
do
can
that?
represent different beliefs and opinions. It shouldn't have to come from a specific religion, because what does that one religion teach that the other opposing viewpoints or atheism can't teach?
Hold on a second. No, that's an interesting question. What does Christianity teach that others do not? A lot. A lot. For example, in Christianity explicitly, there are beliefs that are not found in Buddhism or Hinduism. And again, just look at the fruit. The West is a Christian project. So why would we cut the fruit from its vine? Why would we cut the flower from its roots?
Yeah, and my question is because I think that there's a lot of disagreeing points of view that conflict that, right? Abortion rights. I know that it is a largely Christian value to not be in support of a woman's right to choose whether or not she has an abortion.
To protect
and I know that
life,
you are also anti-democracy, and
I'm pro-elections, but yeah.
Yes, and you're opposed to just the majority ruling over the rest of people, right? And so why is it that you are in support of people that make up the slight majority having power to instill legislation and rules and laws that their religion teaches on the rest of the society? Again, is what I'm saying.
First of all, you can't have a free society without having some sort of a belief in God.
So then why should we use Christian teachings to apply that to the rest of society when they disagree with them?
First of all, it's the best. Show me a better alternative. No, seriously, I mean, you can laugh at it. Show me a society that has gone away from Christianity and has improved itself.
What I'm
No, it's important.
Okay.
I believe that America should remain Christian. Show me a formerly Christian country in Europe that has gone away from Christianity and has become a better, stronger, more better.
What I would point you to is probably towards a country that does not apply those values to things like abortion rights. So I'll probably point you to I'll probably point to Norway. I'd probably point you to a lot of the places like that, because they're not having people die from lack of access to abortion.
And this is where we just have disagreement. I think Europe is a disaster right now.
Okay.
I think Europe is a husk of its former self.
What I'm arguing is that I'm saying in the specific areas of that there's not people literally like dying because they're forced to give birth to a human that they don't want to carry and they don't have proper access to abortion, and those are Christian teachings that are not.
Yeah, in this country we have babies literally dying in the womb every single day.
Yeah. I mean,
3,000 abortions a day.
I mean, I think that's a big deal, but I also at the same time, there are those same Christian teachings.
I would just ask again. You don't have to answer it. This is an interesting question for you, and I want you to think about this for the next week or two.
Okay.
The most important book in my life, of which all truth stems from, is the Bible. Correct. What is your most important book?
The Right-Wing Revolution by Charlie Kirk.
Without the troll, though, but it's important because at some point you have to appeal to something. You have to have a rule book. Every species, all human beings need a rule book for life. We tell you what our rule book is. I know it's like putting you on the spot, but think about it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a rule book, you're lying to yourself. Everybody has a rule book you live by. You just got to tell us what it is.
Fair enough.
All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you,
Charlie.
man. Think about that, okay?
It's alarming how many young people today are heavily influenced by media outlets. It's very shocking, ladies and gentlemen. Social media platforms and ideologies that often promote a one-sided narrative. How sad is that? Rather than encouraging independent thought, these sources frequently present a narrow, filtered version of reality. And ultimately, many kids are absorbing these messages without questioning their accuracy or even motives. How sad. Moreover, far-left media outlets and the dominant liberal narrative often rely on emotionally charged rhetoric to appeal to the feelings rather than to the logic of young people. Can you imagine? It's like they throw away common sense and say, we will live by our feelings, we don't care about common sense, we don't care. Imagine an America without religion, a country where the guiding principles of faith, which have shaped much of its moral and ethical framework, no longer hold sway. Just imagine. In such a society, every individual operates based on their own personal moral code, and the very foundation that has long helped to define right from wrong is fragmented into countless subjective viewpoints. Ladies and gentlemen, when we throw away God, everything turns into chaos. When we try to to replace God with science or with whatever, everything turns into chaos. Without a shared religious or spiritual framework, the moral compass that traditionally unified people, it would disintegrate. It would disintegrate, leaving people to determine what is right or wrong for themselves. Can you imagine a society like that? Can you imagine? While to many this may sound appealing, to some who view religion as outdated or restrictive, the consequence of such a reality is concerning. Yeah, the consequence of such a reality is so concerning. Chaos, ladies and gentlemen. In a society without religion, everything would become acceptable to those who choose to live by their own standards, without the checks and balances provided by religious teachings that emphasize love, respect, compassion, and accountability. The understanding of right and wrong would no longer be anchored in universal principles. Just think about it. Or of the belief of a higher power or a moral giver, lawgiver. Just think about it. Instead, it will be entirely subjective, with each individual deciding what actions are justified or ethical based on their own personal feelings or desires. Can you imagine that? I know to some people, they may view this as a freedom of expression, but it will lead to moral chaos. It will lead to moral chaos, as different people could easily justify harmful behavior simply because it aligns with their own self-interest or perceived worldview. Those are the dangers. There is also a spiritual dimension to this shift, and it's important to acknowledge the weight of what it means to deny our Creator, ladies and gentlemen. Remember in Matthew 10 verse 33, it says, "But whosoever shall deny me before men, him also will I deny before my Father who is in heaven." Think about that. This verse, it serves to remind us of the importance of standing firm in our faith and not being ashamed to acknowledge God in our lives. Never be ashamed to acknowledge God in your life. Never be, because denying Him is not simply a personal choice, but it has eternal consequences. There are eternal consequences. When we fail to acknowledge our Creator, we are distancing ourselves from the very source of our moral compass, our values, our purpose. This is why faith is so essential in our moral framework. Faith is so essential. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen. It keeps us grounded in something bigger than ourselves and reminds us that our actions have deeper significance. Literally, by publicly acknowledging and living out our faith, we show the world that we are committed to something greater than personal success or self-interest. Yes, we demonstrate that our lives are guided by values that transcend worldly concerns. This acknowledgement, ladies and gentlemen, also brings us into alignment with the Creator's purpose for our lives, which is love, to serve, to uplift others, salvation for humanity. The teachings of Jesus emphasize the importance of living a life of humility, kindness, and selflessness. You see, qualities that build strong, compassionate societies. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, America was truly better when we acknowledged and thanked our Creator, because religion not only provides spiritual guidance, but it also fosters the kind of moral values that create a thriving society. Yes, by embracing faith, we honor God, we honor our Creator, uplift others, and live with purpose Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to return to those core values and allow them to guide us in a world that increasingly needs moral clarity, compassion, and unity. Let us live out the teachings of Jesus, acknowledging God with gratitude and love. Let us do that, fostering a society that reflects these timeless principles. Yeah.